Joe Kneinhauer, how old are you?
I'm 90 years old.
90 years old. Time flies. You know, you and I had lunch together on your 70th birthday. Do you remember that in a little restaurant upstairs at Friendship Heights?
Oh,
It's hard to believe that was 20 years
20
ago.
years ago.
20 years ago. Well, it's a long time ago. But I want to talk this afternoon about a time much earlier in your life when you went to Jerusalem to work on the fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. When was that? The late 50s, wasn't it?
I finished at Johns Hopkins in 1956, and then I spent a year in Rome, 56, 57, at the Biblical Institute in Rome.
Pontifical Biblical Institute.
Yes, and then from there I went 1957, 58 to Jerusalem. And I lived in the, I can't remember the name of it, but it's now called the Albright Archaeological Institute.
American School.
American School of Oriental Research was the name of it.
Yes, now it's the Albright Institute.
Yeah, Institute.
You didn't live in the École Biblique?
No. I would go over to the École Biblique for Mass and things like that, but I never lived there.
But it's only a block away.
Yeah, it's just across, yeah.
And that was the time when the publication team was still in Jerusalem, wasn't it?
That's right. I was there to help them, you see. It was 1956. I was going on my way to Rome, and I went to the only biblical convention that was being held that summer in Strasbourg in France. And while I was there, Professor Albright, under whom I had studied at Johns Hopkins.
You got your PhD from him.
Yeah. He was also there. And Père Deveau, the French Dominican at the École Biblique, asked if there was some person who could be added to the team to help those people. And Albright said, well, we got somebody right here. So he took me and he introduced me to Deveau. And that's how I got the...
that was it. But that was several years after the publication team had been appointed.
Oh, yes. The publication team. You know, I worked with Milik, Starkey, and people like that.
They were all at the École.
Yeah, well, yes. They lived at the École, but we worked in the
Scrollery.
in the museum, the Palestine Archaeological Museum, as they called it in those days.
Yes, that was it came to be called the Scrollery, I guess.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And so you worked in the Scrollery.
Oh yeah, for the whole year.
You were there just for 1 year.
Yeah. And then Ray Brown followed me the next year. See, I started a concordance.
Oh, you started it.
Yeah, I started.
Did you know that you were supposed to go to Jerusalem to start a concordance?
I didn't know that until I got there. No, see, I had all the plans of going to Jerusalem in any case, but then the way things developed when Albright met Deveau and so on, that's how I got sort of co-opted into the team to help out.
So you didn't know what you were going to do when you got to Jerusalem?
At first I didn't know. But
so what happened when you got there?
Well, when I got there, then they asked me, to start this concordance. And in those days we didn't have any computers, and everything was being done on 4x5 cards.
4x5 or 3x5?
No, 4x5. It was a special size.
Okay.
And not 4x6 either. That's the usual 3x5 or 4x6. But these were 4x5.
Did you have any instructions on how to make a concordance?
No, but I devised the way to do it. I mean, what I put on the upper right hand corner was the reference. In other words, 1Q 246 or something like that.
Yeah.
See, but then I made what they call quick, the context quoted word in context. And that's, but in other words, I would put in there not just the one word, but 4 or 5 words, so that you saw the context in which that word was being used.
And then you did it in ink on these cards.
Pardon me?
You did it writing in ink on these cards.
Writing in ink. Yeah.
What did you do it from? Did you?
Well, they gave me their tentative transcriptions.
I see. So you didn't work from the fragments. You worked from the transcriptions.
Well, I always had the fragments there in front of me because sometimes I would correct some of their mistakes. I would always have the fragments there under glass in front of me. You see, so I was going along, and every now and then somebody would make a mistake. That's inevitable.
Sure.
And so I would oftentimes caught them. But then I put that in, and at the bottom of every card that I made, I put a number, alphabet numerically, right through so that I could put them all together, and then sort them out according to the word itself. You see, but so it'd be able to put them all back together if it were possible at some time or other to check things.
Well, let me ask you this. You really had to work from a transcription.
Oh, yeah.
But were all the fragments transcribed by the time you got there in 1957?
Well, I'm not too sure that they all were, but a great deal of them were. And they would I started with the Aramaic ones, Starkey's stuff. And then later on, I moved into the Hebrew ones and so on. So that I got a good bit of them.
Did you get a feel for what was the whole team there? Was Strugnell there?
Strugnell was there at various. He wasn't there continually, but Allegro was there. Strugnell, Milik, of course, Starkey,
and of course DeVoe.
And DeVoe, yeah. Well, we didn't see too much of him. He was, in charge of the whole business.
Yeah, but he really didn't do much with the fragments.
He didn't do much with
But
Pierre Benoit was oftentimes would come in because he had some of the Greek stuff. There was some
from Cave 7.
Yeah, well, I forget what cave. Yeah,
but it was very, very small.
Yeah, but no, I know. But
incidentally, I have to say he was just a lovely, lovely man, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was as fine a man as I've ever known. I think.
Yeah.
And what were these guys doing on the team if the transcripts were already made?
Well, they were the ones that were, they hadn't finished it. But it still was going on because after all, Ray Brown came along the next year and did the same kind of work that I started.
Yeah.
And there was a third person, Will Oxtoby. I don't know whether you ever heard the name.
Oh yes.
Yeah. He was up in Canada later on. I don't know.
But I didn't realize. So the 3 people who made the concordance were not there at the same time.
No,
they worked.
No, each one of us. No, I was there for a full year.
Did you interact much with the team on publication?
Well, yeah, once in a while.
What can you describe them? What was Strugnell like in those years?
Well, he had just married. I mean, he had married a Belgian girl, Cecile was her first name, and he had met her at the University of Chicago. He had spent a year at the University of Chicago, and that's where he met her, and so he married her, and then they came over to Jerusalem. I arrived there in July, and then they came around October or so.
Was the relations between the members of the publication team a good relationship?
Oh yeah.
How about Allegro? He certainly.
Well, Allegro, he didn't like me because I was Catholic, and so
I see. But so was almost everybody else on the team.
Well, I know, but see, I spoke the same language that he did.
English.
Yeah, English. You see. Whereas with other people, I had to speak French with the other people. And so
How did you know that Allegro didn't like you?
Well, he said so.
And I imagine you got along well with Père DeVoe, but you didn't see much of him.
No. went off one day, to visit his dig. He was excavating. No, it was someplace else. He was excavating. I can't remember now the name of it, but we went to visit his site and so on.
And what about Millick?
Well, we saw him often, not every day, because he was alcoholic.
Ah, yes.
It was a wino, the worst kind.
Uh-huh.
And it was sad because I can still remember going over to the École Biblique one Saturday afternoon, and I went up and knocked on his door, and he said, "Qui est là?" And I said, "Fitzmyer," and he said, "Je suis malade." I'm sick.
Yeah.
It was a shame. I mean, it's
brilliant guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, later on, I mean, he when he finished his work there, he went up to Beirut, and he left the priesthood. He got married and so on, and then later on he lived in Paris.
Yes.
And I can remember visiting him one time when
I did too.
Yeah, in Paris.
And were you considered on a lower level than the members of the publication team?
Oh yeah, I was there doing a concordance. I didn't have any text to publish.
Uh-huh. And that concordance, Joe, really eventually was the key to the release of the scrolls.
Yes. See, the trouble is that eventually, I forget how it was. At the time of the 6-Day War, remember that name? That 1967, I think.
Yeah.
That's when they took all those cards that were, and they threw them in a closet, and they got all mixed up and so on. So it was finally put together again. Somebody put it together, some German, I can't remember the name of.
Oh, yes.
And
yes. I can't. A very, very nice fellow who died.
Well, in any case, I mean, he put the thing together, and put all the things in proper order and so on, and then printed them out. And having printed them out, he offered to me a copy for $325.
Well, that's getting it ahead of the time. But in '67, they were thrown in the closet and dispersed and were unusable in that condition.
Yeah, but somebody
put them. Even when they were in proper order, you had to be in Jerusalem to use them.
That's right.
So there's only really one copy.
That's right.
Now then,
but you see, then they published it somehow or other. I don't know how they did it.
Well, they lined them up 7 on a page, and I think what happened is that it was sometime after '67. They decided nobody's in Jerusalem to work on the fragments, and this is a very valuable concordance. I mean, I'll ask you in a minute to tell us how a concordance is so useful. But when the team was dispersed, they naturally had to think, well, how can we get this concordance available to all the team members in the various parts of the world? And that's when they decided this German at Göttingen, Hartmut Stegemann.
Uh-huh.
Hartmut Stegemann handled it, and he had a subordinate who printed them 7 to a page in order. So once you had that copy, then you could use it like any other concordance. But Strugnell, this was already when Strugnell was in charge. so it was in the 80s, and only 30 copies were printed. And Strugnell had published on the front of it, in capital letters and underlined, "Editorium in usum," for the use of the editors, not for guys like Joe Fitzmyer, only for the, and you say that someone offered to give you a copy for $325?
That's
Tell us about that.
That's whoever, it may have been that Stegemann. It was somebody from Germany.
I don't think Stegemann would have done. He was a fine.
Well, I don't know who it was, but I
Yeah.
can after all, it was my work, and then they asking me to pay for it.
And such a sum.
Yeah.
Of course, today, with what they're charging for some of the books, that may not be
Yeah.
a big price. But that's the first you learned of it when he came to you?
Yeah.
What did you find out about it from him? Did you just tell him to go away, or what?
No, he didn't come to me. He sent me a letter.
Ah.
He wrote to me and offered me a copy at that price.
And what did you do?
No, I just ignored it. I
see.
can't remember whether I ever wrote back to him.
Uh-huh. Did you ever get a copy?
No. The only time I ever saw a copy was over in Baltimore. There's the what's that name of the school? Hebrew.
Baltimore Hebrew University at that
Yeah,
time.
well, they call it university now, but it used to be college.
Baltimore Hebrew College. Yeah, you're right.
And that's where I went over there one time. That's where I used a copy. They had a copy of it over there.
Your own work. You had to
Yep.
go over to Baltimore Hebrew College to use it. Well, how do you use it? Why is a concordance so valuable?
Well, see, because oftentimes fragments have part of a word. It's on a certain line. The fragment is breaks right in the middle of a word, and if you have a concordance and you can look up the existing 3 or 4 letters that are there in the concordance, oftentimes you can fill out the that word plausibly, at least, if not certainly.
And you also have the words on either side of it, so you can go to the.
Well, sometimes if you're lucky, you might even have another copy of the same text.
What about the meaning of it? I mean, you have several. Let's say you've got one word that you can find it in 5 different contexts. Does that help you understand the meaning of the term?
Well, yes, but normally speaking, I didn't put the meaning down on the cards.
No, but a researcher could do that.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I know in my low-level research, if you can call it research, when I use a concordance, I like to see where in the Bible, a biblical concordance is the standard, the word appears. And I can't tell you how often the same Hebrew word is translated differently. I'm sure you know this.
Well, that's because of the context, oftentimes.
Exactly, and so the reappearance of the word helps you to understand how it can be used in different contexts. And in many of the fragments of the scrolls, you don't have the context.
That's right.
But that apparently is not the main use of the concordance that you created.
Well, no, but the concordance that I created was intended to help the editors of the different texts and so on. In other words, if they had, 3 or 4 letters, and they look up those letters in the concordance, it might give them the full word, or even possibly another copy of the same text.
Well, when you did this, did you ever think beyond the daily work of creating the concordance, what use it might be put to?
Well, I was hoping that that eventually I would be able to publish the concordance. But you see, what actually happened is there's a concordance that you find in every volume of the Discoveries in the Judean Desert series. But that has nothing to do with the concordance I was working on.
Right.
That's done by somebody else, somebody by the name of Fan.
Steve Fan.
Yeah. I mean, so it was his concordance actually that took the place of what I was thinking about. And even as a matter of fact, there are two big volumes now of the concordance of the Dead Sea Scrolls. I don't know whether you've ever seen them. Have you?
No.
There are two great big volumes, and those folio-sized volumes. I have them upstairs. Somebody sent them to me. It was Western Field sent them to me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But in the event, your concordance was key to breaking the monopoly of the scrolls.
Perhaps.
Well, let's follow that through a little bit. When Strugnell had these 30 copies of your concordance made in Germany, Göttingen, somehow or other, actually, Benzion Wacholder, did you know him?
I've met him, yes.
Yes. Well, as you know, he's can hardly see.
Hardly
you have to
see,
hold
yeah.
something up to like this to be able to. And he taught at Hebrew Union College.
Yeah.
And he happened to be in a taxi cab with Strugnell in Jerusalem, and he asked Strugnell if he could have a copy of this concordance. And for some reason or other, Strugnell complied. And so there was a copy in the library of Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati.
Uh-huh.
And there was a graduate student by the name of Martin Abegg.
Yes, I know the name, yeah.
And he was doing his dissertation on the War Scroll. And there were copies of the War Scroll, the fragments of the War Scroll from Cave 4 that weren't available to him because they were secreted by the team. But with the use of this concordance, your concordance that was in the library of Hebrew Union College, he was able to reconstruct some of the texts. So
I didn't know that.
You could reconstruct the text from a concordance, couldn't you?
Sure.
How would you do that?
Well, as I said, I numbered at the bottom of the card that I made on the left hand corner in the bottom, a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. So that when you filed them alphabetically, but you could always put them back together again if you wanted to, according to that, because of that number.
Well, that would be a big job, but he did it with a computer, so the press...
Well, see, I remember now that he didn't know what those numbers were at the bottom of the cards. You see?
Yes, but of course it's much faster with a computer. He put them in a computer, and the press started calling the computer Rabbi Computer. But
they also, didn't they talk about it, something about it, that they bootlegged? That was the word that was used in the newspapers.
Well, that was the accusation.
Yeah,
that was the accusation. It was a harsh time when I read about it now. Now everything's peaceful, but it was so venomous at that time.
Yeah, that's right.
Wacholder and Marty Abegg had to decide whether they'll publish these things. They called me, and I was ready to go ahead. And Marty was just a graduate student at that time, and he asked his friends whether he should do this. And they said, "Marty, you'll never get a job. If you publish this, you're out." And his father and his minister told him to go ahead with it. And that's how we published it.
Uh-huh.
And that was what broke the monopoly on the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
And your concordance was a central pivot in it. Of course, the IAA didn't stop fighting even at that point. They were going to call a conference in Jerusalem, and it never came about. But their accusation was that it was theft and wholly improper. And but now it's all out, and everyone's happy, and
They've forgotten all about it.
forgotten all about. We're all friendly, and work together, and it's a completely different atmosphere. The scrolls are open to everyone. As you know now, they're being digitized and with new new photographic techniques, so that you can see at different levels very minutely, and to try to make it clear what the still obscure points are. So the work continues, and you continued your involvement with the scrolls, didn't you? That became your life's work.
Yeah, more or less.
More or less. Well, you also published some big tomes in the Anchor Bible on books of the New Testament. But also, you sent me an inscribed copy, which I treasure, of your book of the materials for Dead Sea Scroll studies. What's the name of that book? A Guide to the
Dead Sea Scrolls.
A Guide to the Dead Sea Scrolls and Related Literature.
Yeah.
Now 300 pages in a revised and expanded edition. Are you going to come out with a third edition?
No.
That's it, huh?
Yeah.
Let me ask you one final question that has nothing to do with the scrolls. You got your PhD from William Foxwell Albright, the grand master of and originator, some say, of biblical archaeology, whose reputation has suffered in recent years, I would say. What was it like studying with William Foxwell Albright?
He was a terrible teacher in class. You never knew where things were coming from and so on, but everybody understood that. I mean, his lectures were rambled, but that wasn't the important thing. Was that you could go into him and propose certain things and so on, and he would say, yes, do it. And no, it's an or he'd say no. You know, it was the sort of personal contact with him.
Was he kind?
Oh, very, very kind. You know, I can still remember. He used to. He would give exams for French and German. In other words, if you were a graduate student, you had to be able to read French and German, see, and so I had heard that he was going to give the exams on the following Saturday morning. So I knocked on the door and I asked him if I could come and take the exams with the other people. And he said, well, why don't you take it right now? I said, okay. And then he got up to get two copies of a book, you know, and he turned around to me. He said, but you were in Europe, weren't you? And I said, oui, je puis continuer en français si vous voulez, oder auf Deutsch, wenn Sie wollen. And that was the end of the examination. He said, get the papers, and he signed them. And
he was a wonderful man, wasn't he?
yeah, see, but I mean, no, he realized that I had studied in Belgium, you see, so I learned, spoke French. I was with the Walloons in Belgium. I didn't speak Flemish, but I learned French there. And so that when I came back, I was speaking French. I had made my last year of Jesuit training in Germany, so I had German also. Mm-hmm. So but I had heard that at home as a kid.
Did you ever meet his wife?
Albright. Oh yes, Ruth Albright, sure.
What was she like?
Well, she was a kindly old woman, you know. I mean, and she had 4 sons, you know. I mean, and she was a Catholic, and all her boys were.
And William wasn't.
That's right.
And
But she was converted actually in Jerusalem.
by
Dorm. Dhorm.
Yes, I know. You may be right.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And that was after Albright was married to her.
Yeah.
Very interesting time.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to tell us about that time?
Can't remember now offhand. If you suggest something, I might be able to.
Yeah. Well, I think we might end there, and thank you very, very much, Joe Fitzmyer. It was wonderful talking to you.
Okay, well, thank you.